And we are live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, the hotel Wi Fi does the trick here. We're getting started with our 2 p.m. special edition live update, Weather Center live July 31st, 2024. It is officially the last calendar day of July, and August looks to be getting started with a very, very special introduction. Let's put it that way. We're here for a special edition live stream, and we have a very special update to bring to you guys today. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your Wednesday afternoon to join us here on the Weather Center. I know this is not our traditional live stream update, but I wanted to give it a little bit of time and see exactly what new model data we get in between yesterday, the day before, and when I last saw you on Sunday, since in reality, things were not changing too much. They have since changed pretty dramatically. And when I say dramatically, we're looking at, I remember I quote a storm we were covering last hurricane season where things were going backwards. And we're seeing that again across the spectrum. So let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be a very rough and cut live stream. I hope you guys can see and follow along with me. So I've been sitting here obsessing over our latest 12Z European model update, and we have a good majority of the run in. Let me go ahead and refresh this real fast. I hope you guys can still see what I'm showing. We have 234 hours in of the updated model run, and originally, the European model was kind of all by itself. It was indicating that this system was going to develop. None of the other models wanted it to. It was indicating this system was going to go up our east coast. None of the other models wanted it to. Now, all the other models have back-trended towards, or retrograded, I should say, to our west coast. And the GFS and the Euro simultaneously have the system kind of spinning over top our state. I'll just walk you through it. Let me go back to the YouTube screen really quickly just to make sure that you guys can see what I'm seeing. I'm not too sure why the color coding looks different on your side of the spectrum. Why does it look like that? That's very weird. I wonder what's going on here. Let me see if I can change the model overlay. Let's see here. Let me go down to, let's try the Southwest Atlantic, and we'll go to, is there precipitable water in far enough? And is that showing up in black and white for you guys? Let's see. I'm not too sure why the MSLP and precip overlay was showing up in black and white. Remember, if you're watching right now, this is going to more or less be a conglomerate of just stepping through things because, wow, what is with the color table? That is so weird. I'm looking at the actual live stream page right now, and even the precipitable water looks very weird. All right, so then let's go with, can we use the surface winds? I need to go back in after this live stream and look at exactly what's going on with my laptop color table and see what's going on, why it is that it's showing up so weirdly. Let's go ahead and try out our winds. So the winds are in. This is it. So this is our 12Z European model today. Over the last 24 hours, all of our models have suddenly shifted back towards the west, and they're all indicating a stall. And I'll try to walk you through that if the live stream lets me. But it does look like we're looking at a situation very similar to what we saw with Hurricane Beryl. We were predicting that this system was going to crash into Central America, whether it be Belize, just to the south of the Yucatan of Mexico, and then carry its way through the Bay of Campeche into Mexico. In this case, once again, the Euro was a little premature, if you will, on that out-to-sea track. And we've seen a huge course correction over the last 12 to 24 hours worth of model runs. So I'll take you through the loop. Hopefully it looks okay on you guys' side. Let me see here. Yes, okay, I'll take that. That looks a little bit better. So as you go through the run, you can see that now we're thinking this feature is going to show itself somewhere off of our west coast. And it's going to try to organize, take on a little bit of a low-level spin off the Big Bend area, the Big Bend coast of the northwest quadrant of Florida. This is where I'm at a loss. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to look at the charts. I'm going to brief it to you as I see it, and we'll talk about it afterward, because I personally don't know. I mean, I do. Truthfully, I do know how to brief this, but it's very bizarre briefing it as such, because it almost seems imaginary. It almost seems fantasy or phantom. So the system comes ashore in northwest Florida. Then it kind of marinates over northern Florida, dips south ever so slightly, and it goes backwards. It retrogrades out of the west-northwest component that we traditionally see with tropical features moving up and gaining latitude due to Coriolis, conservation of angular momentum, you know, all that good sciencey and physics jazz we always talk about on all the different weather channels. It continues to strengthen a bit of a brown water effect, perhaps because our soil moisture is where it needs to be and our drought conditions are not nearly as hefty as they were, say, last year. So it could possibly be both the European and the GFS are indicating some muddy water or brown water effect in terms of the system maintaining its organization just simply by thriving off the latent heat exchange and the evaporative processes that go on because of the moisture we have just naturally entrenched across the state of Florida. So then you continue on. This puppy plops itself off just to the immediate south of Melbourne Cocoa Beach, and then finally goes back to business and continues to strengthen as it rides the Gulf Stream up towards Cape Hatteras. So, to tell you the truth, this is very Hurricane Elena. This is very Tropical Storm Faye-ish. These are my two analogs, and a few of my other buddies out there in the tropical community. We've been talking about it fairly heavily. Gosh, I'm looking at the live stream once again, and I don't know why the color table looks so weird. I see the winds are reflecting black on you guys. But anyways, that's what we have going on the European model. I'm very, very curious to see if our European ensembles, our EPS models, EPS members, I should say, reflect the same sort of a tendency. Now, this is also what had the internet ablaze with, you know, freakish posts on X, Instagram, TikTok, etc. This is our 12Z GFS from earlier today, and as I take you through the loop, hopefully the color table is coming through okay for you guys to see. Let's see. So let's let the live stream catch up. I'm posting it just for a second right now. Dang, okay, and the color tables are also very wonky once again on here, so I guess I'm going to have to use the wind overlay. I need to figure out what's going on with this, why it's doing that. Let's use the 850 millibar vorticity. Let's see if that'll skin white, but I'd rather it not look all sorts of distorted. So let's see. I'm looking at the live stream, guys. Forgive me. This is kind of why I'm doing it live, because I'd rather be able to adjust on the fly as we move. Let's see as it goes forward. Let me switch over to the 850 and see if it'll show you guys what it is that we need to see. It also looks like we're lagging a little bit. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of hotel Wi-Fi. It seems to be running fairly decently, but yeah, no, the vorticity is also going to be black and white. All right, well, what a bummer. I apologize, guys. I'm not too sure what's going on my laptop, but we're going to have to go through the black and white 1950s version of our weather briefing. So here comes our feature. You can see the GFS is just about 100% in line with what the European model is thinking. This is something I poised in my tropical analysis or my tropical chat earlier this afternoon, is looking at both 12Z runs. Not only will we have to monitor whether or not this becomes a trend, the consistent solution moving forward, if our ensemble members begin to pick up on this potential collapse in steering, the stalling, and then the potential loop-de-loop a la Shikra, Montu, the Hulk, whichever roller coaster of your preference you want to put on the table. We can't fall back on GFS being GFS. We can't fall back on Euro being Euro, because both of them are doing almost exactly the same thing. This is on August 5th, the night of August 4th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It comes ashore just as the European model has predicted, as an organized tropical storm for the Big Bend area, very reminiscent of Idalia last hurricane season. And if you notice, it stalls out. It stays right over top there until late in the day on the 6th, and begins to retrograde and almost fall back on itself towards Central Florida. Now, this iteration is a little bit different. Notice it is still over the state. It is still deepening somehow. Both the European and the GFS model are looking at the same thing. I want to say it is probably still trying to find a way to not only take advantage of all the hot continental shelf waters around our coastlines, whether it be the Gulf Stream on the east coast or all the warm Gulf of Mexico waters off our west coast, but it continues to retrograde south, and then it moves back offshore and re-intensifies and attacks the panhandle of Florida, which is very bizarre. It's very bizarre. I'm honestly at a loss a little bit. It looks like we're lagging out big time. We're lagging big time. Looks like we're stuck. We have not moved anywhere. What a shame. Yep, we are stuck. We're dead in the water. So we're lagging. I'm just going to continue to talk because hopefully it'll catch up to itself and we will get information. I actually feel like this is... I think it stopped the stream altogether because of the keyframe issue that I'm running into. Yep, it looks like we are stuck. We are definitely stuck. I'm still live. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. Can you guys still hear me? The actual video is stuck, but I still see the live ticker moving. I'm not sure if I can try to fix the keyframe rate while we're in the live stream, see if that'll make any adjustments. It does not look like it's catching up. Let me see if I can adjust keyframes in OBS while we're here. Yep, that's not going to do it. This is also freezing up. All right, I'm not too sure what happened with the actual video itself. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but in layman's terms, essentially, okay, if you guys can still hear me, then that works. That works. I will continue to kind of talk you through everything despite the video itself being lagged. So I do apologize for the technical difficulties. This was what I was afraid of. This is kind of what I wanted to allude to before coming into this, and perhaps maybe I better do some long-form content and just upload it naturally as opposed to doing these live discussions. So anyways, key takeaway, unfortunately, is Florida is most definitely back on the game board, and it seems as if we may just have an approaching tropical disturbance, if not a low-end tropical storm, trying to make landfall somewhere along our west coast. Now, obviously, we'll have to keep in mind we have not developed an actual low-level circulation. We don't have any feature on the map itself, so the models are still doing their best to more or less guess exactly where the low-level circulation will develop and how it plugs in with our already apparent driving steering currents around, you know, the Greater Atlantic, the North America, Central America, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean, etc. So from the jump start, I just want to let you guys know we're not panicking yet. We're not concerned. We're not worried. In fact, based on this latest iteration and whether or not this becomes the trend moving forward, the biggest concern is going to mainly be flooding. This would, truthfully, without sounding very sensationalist, this would be more or less a extensive and extreme flood threat if we have a tropical cyclone parked over the state of Florida or any local area for that matter for 2, 3, 4, 5 days at a time. This would be an extensive flood threat. So we would probably be seeing several upon several inches of rainfall accumulation, and thanks to our sea breeze thunderstorms and a lot of localized flooding we've been realizing for the last couple of weeks now, we would more than likely see the flood threat going up, and we would not have as much of that evaporative process, enough of that runoff, and enough of that soil absorption that we would typically lean on here in the state of Florida to dispel any kind of, flood potential. Even if the system were to sit on us for approximately 24 hours, that would be a problem in of itself. That'll already produce enough heavy rainfall to induce some localized coastal flooding, urban flooding, roadway flooding, any lower-lying areas, especially given Florida is right at sea level. The flood threat would be the biggest risk here. We'll have to reevaluate exactly how much intensification or organization that we get, if at all, from this system while it's on approach. It seems like our model guidance, especially the European and GFS ensembles, are thinking we're mainly going to see terrain interaction until this thing can plop itself off into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So we have that one component going for us. It'll also be very, very heavily determined by when we see a mid to low level circulation stack down to the surface for us to track. Obviously, we won't know until that actually happens, and then we can get some reconnaissance data out of it. We can get our hurricane models running, and we can come to a better consensus on what the intensity of this system would look like. But as of right now, the biggest takeaway for this briefing, since we've lost complete video capabilities here. Key takeaways in conclusion before we potentially wrap up early is flood threat. Flood threat would be the main issue, not only for the state of Florida. We can't forget about all of our Caribbean neighbors, the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos. We've already seen on satellite imagery just how much of the infrared has been developing convection. This system actually has a lot more moisture with it now than it did even simply 18 to 24 hours ago. 18 to 24 hours ago, this system was a very dry wave entrenched within all of the Saharan dust that was across the Atlantic basin. This system, more or less like a bowling ball, came through and helped to clear all of that out. We are now very, very, very much so into the more favorable sea surface temps and ocean heat content closer to our Leeward Islands. And as a result, we're really starting to see the thunderstorm activity popping off and doing its thing. And what this is also going to do, which I'm noticing a lot of our broadcasting sources around here, WKMG, West 2, WFTV, they're all starting to emphasize as well that the August tropical activity is likely going to start going up. I wanted to brief you guys our latest global tropics hazards, obviously because the live stream, the video is done. We're not going to be able to do that, but just to kind of summarize it and give you guys a bit of a vivid representation that you can use your imaginations for. Global tropics hazards, obviously not the end-all, be-all official source, but they are projecting that early August into mid to latter August, we are now at a greater than 40% chance at tropical development across the MDR. The Lesser Antilles are still bullseyed as the front line area that we'll need to monitor for tropical activity, as are the Greater Antilles and the Southeast and the Bahamas. So this could be the general trend we see as we wander into the month of August, and we're really going to have to maintain our situational awareness and monitor exactly what both our deterministic models and our ensemble suites do as we go over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. Because regardless of what happens with this first tropical disturbance, there's going to be more popping in beyond that. Yes, Griffin, I'm aware that unfortunately video capabilities have been lost. The keyframe frequency needs to be adjusted. I'll probably have to play with this after the live stream. So I'm more or less going podcast style and trying to just narrate for you guys. And I would like to think I'm doing a fairly decent job because I'm not looking at any graphics on my end either. I just haven't clicked anything. I'm looking at you guys' chat just so this way I don't potentially cause any more signal interference and we lag out of the stream altogether. So this is definitely going to be very, very unorthodox, but I'm still trying to get you as much information as possible. Please tap 1 in the chat or leave a comment if you can still hear me okay with little interference of the signal. But moving right along, truthfully, I do believe, and I had this feeling, not necessarily from the jump start, but early on initially, that the European model may have been a little overzealous with trying to move our trough through the Great Lakes and the Midwest, pick this feature up as it begins to develop near the Bahamas, and then kick it out to sea in an out-to-sea fashion, very similar to what we saw in 2023. I would show you guys the latest graphics between now and I want to say approximately 30 to 36 hours ago, over the last several model updates from 0, 6, 12, and 18, we've noticed a rapid decrease and a kind of acceleration in the propagation of our trough that's up over the United States. It's running pretty much parallel to the Canadian and United States border. And the reason I'm talking about this was initially the Euro, both the AI and its operational counterpart, were thinking this would be a lot more amplified and it would slow the pattern down. In fact, now that I think about it, I have to make a note to see whether or not we're still forecasting a strong positive PNA or if we've backed off from that, because that'll also be extremely telling as to whether or not this system decides to make its way up towards the east or if it's going to come into the Gulf. Regardless of whichever direction it goes, the heavy rain threat, okay, perfect. I see you guys popping into the chat there, dropping the ones. That's fantastic that we're at least still getting the information out. Regardless of development over the next 72 to 96 hours, the biggest threat, once again, to reiterate for you guys, is going to be the heavy rain threat. Heavy rain threat and more than likely the tornado threat. I'll tell you that much right now, because even if this system isn't developing and isn't deepening as strong as some of the earlier model renditions were thinking, GFS obviously at 18 Zulu yesterday was going for a Category 4 hurricane. We can't put that out of the realm of extreme possibility. You know, there is such thing as chaos theory with these models running to the end-all, be-all extreme left end of the spectrum. However, right now, a realistic outcome looks to be a disorganized area of tropical slop, if you will, crawling up our west coast, the spine of Florida, as some folks will geographically put it, before maybe stalling out either right off the coastline or further inland. Whether it stalls out off the coast or inland, the rain threat and the flood threat remains the most persistent issue that a lot of us Floridians are going to be faced with. If it does decide to park itself and spin freely over the water, that becomes a bit more of a surge, coastal flooding, and potential intensification issue because it'll be sitting over an area very moist with lots of very good anticyclonic flow and divergence aloft, brought on by an anticyclone at 200 millibars, and the propagation of our Kelvin waves associated with the Madden-Julian oscillation. So that's another reason why I think CPC is igniting the tropical Atlantic for most of August, because we're finally seeing that standing wave in the eastern Pacific migrate across Central America, South America, into the tropical Atlantic basin. So that's also going to help to flush out a lot of that African dust and open up the train of the waves moving off towards the west. So that's going to be the issue moving forward, honestly, guys, is whether or not this system will organize. We're still in for a very tricky forecast. I will say I'm very pleasantly surprised, albeit surprised, to see what our models are thinking today. That's the key issue here. I mean, we have good convergence. We're now seeing our models lining up with this westward fetch. I'm very curious to see if the 12Z AI model continues to echo its sentiments. The AI model was the one that made a very dramatic adjustment. The AI model before the operational European model was the precursor to this eastward jog. The AI model kept developing it over the Bahamas and shooting it out to sea in rapid haste. Now, between 0Z this morning and 06Z earlier today around 6, 7 a.m. Eastern Time was when the AI model suddenly, and I mean suddenly and dramatically, adjusted the track and moved off our east coast, well off of our west coast. It kind of really flipped the script entirely, turned it upside down. In fact, I know that, and I'm not going to touch it. Never mind, I'm not going to touch it. But, yeah, so now I had a feeling that the European model was going to follow suit. I've noticed that the AI model tends to more or less trigger or instigate what the IFS model does for the European. So we're going to take a look at what our ensembles look like after this live stream. I'm also going to putz with the keyframe because, unfortunately, we have no video capability here. I hope you guys can still hear me. But either way, we still have a lot to track. This is going to be a very tricky forecast moving forward, and I can promise you guys I'm definitely going to help. I'm going to definitely work on trying to get video capabilities back up so we can either do another live stream tomorrow, probably do one tomorrow. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, I'm going to be home again tomorrow. Today's already Wednesday, so tomorrow evening, late in the evening, around maybe our 8 p.m. Time frame, we will do another live stream from back in the weather center. So then we can actually go over all this information and see if there's any more convergence in our model data. Right now, the biggest thing is going to be whether or not our ensembles are picking up the same trends. If they are, then I would buy into it just a little bit more. If our operational models are only keeping this West Coast hugging and stalling by themselves and the ensembles are not doing the same thing, then we'll have to see. 12Z operational does in fact have a storm. It's very disorganized and very sloppy, but it does have a closed low-level circulation making landfall, whether it be as a disturbance or a depression. Not a named storm, but it's on there. It's generally, it begins to close off before it moves inland, and then it really begins to kick up as it exits our east coast. So all of our models are thinking west coast development in one way, shape, or form, whether it remains disorganized and sloppy or if it tries to gain that low-level cyclone before moving in. Again, key takeaway is Florida's on the game board. We have to watch as this continues to move through the U.S., British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Jamaica will likely see some more increased thunderstorm coverage with this if it continues to dive further towards the south. Cayman Islands, I'm watching you guys as well, Turks and Caicos, Cuba, and then naturally Florida and the Florida Keys. Those are going to be the areas that we're going to have to pay close attention to, primarily for a heavy rain threat as this system moves very slowly. It is moving very slow because it's entrained with that giant mid-level cyclone that initially drew all of our moisture towards the north from the get-go. But I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this live stream, guys. YouTube is dead in the water. We're still streaming, thankfully, and I'm sure you guys can still hear my voice, but I'm sick and tired of looking at this thing spinning and stuck with my face on Tropical Tidbits. So we're going to go ahead and close out the live stream. For those of you still asking, if you haven't put 2 and 2 together, hotel Wi-Fi sucks. It's not working. So unfortunately, my laptop cannot compute the data, and it's not allowing me to do video. So, yeah. Probably going to have to lean on short or long form content, and we may have to wait until tomorrow evening to do another live stream once I'm back in the weather center. Please don't pre-plan for a scheduled time. I will schedule it when I have the ability to do so. It'll probably be a long day of driving tomorrow. Probably won't be home until early evening time, which means I'm going to try to shoot for anywhere between 8 to 9 p.m. to do another discussion or do some sort of a video update for you all so you can see what's going on. But, if you wouldn't mind, dropping a comment, still continue to like this live stream. Drop a comment down below if you have any additional questions. This was definitely not what I was anticipating, not the direction I wanted to go in, but I hope you still got the gist of it and the key takeaways. Conclusion is, we still have a very tough forecast ahead. Models are generally favoring the western side of Florida for the dirty side of this system, whatever it may look like, if it's an open wave, a disturbance, or a deepening tropical cyclone. That's going to be the kicker. We still have a lot of ground to cover. We need to monitor if our ensembles can begin to catch up with what our operational models are suddenly swinging towards. This has been a dramatic adjustment, and I will anticipate there will be more adjustments as we go along, because this only just occurred. We saw this shift begin to happen at 0Z this morning. 06Z continued it, and now 12Z has kind of tied the knot in terms of our cardinal hours of 0 and 12. And now we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. And I will definitely update you guys with ensemble data. This is one of those instances where if you follow me on any other social media platforms, or if you have any other social media platforms, and if you have the means of doing so, drop me a follow, give me a holler on Instagram, TikTok, or X. I can definitely drop more readily available updates on there, especially in situations where my connectivity just doesn't allow me to do a coherent live stream. And I, again, apologize. This is out of my hands. I'm trying to get you guys information. I'm trying to keep you updated. I can't plan for things like Wi-Fi connectivity. Can't plan for things like, my laptop being a piece of garbage. I do intend on hopefully upgrading this laptop soon enough, so this way OBS and all my other streaming software can kind of process appropriately, as opposed to it just freezing up first chance it gets. But thank you all very much for giving me your undivided attention this afternoon. Again, I sincerely apologize for the technical difficulties. I hope you still took away some decent conclusions. No time to hype, no time to get concerned, no time to worry about any kind of major hurricane issues. That definitely does not seem like a realistic outcome. It's mainly going to be the rain threat. If this thing stalls out, the rains and whatever kind of isolated convective activity that does decide to bundle up near this system, that's going to be our primary concern, whether you live on the coast or even inland Florida, inland island areas that are under the gun for this system passing through over the next 3 to 5 days. The rain threat and the flood threat seems to be the most extensive issue that will be faced across the board. We need to continue to evaluate whether or not this stalling trend and this possible loop-de-loop as we go between currents. I wanted to show you guys the 850 millibar wind flow to show you exactly where that tunnel of least resistance moving up towards the northeast stops, closes off as a high-pressure anticyclone over the central U.S. propagates towards the mid-Atlantic coast. It essentially cuts that river of southwesterly flow off and prevents this system from moving out of our AOR and just kind of gets stuck. It's scary to say, but this kind of gives Dorian vibes in the sense of what happened to the steering current. Please don't play around with that. Don't manipulate the wording. I'm not saying this is going to be a Dorian, but if you look at the way the steering reacted, the same thing with Elena and Tropical Storm Faye from years ago, we saw this same similar instance where a weak trough managed to work its way through. The jet did not deepen it as far to the south as initially anticipated, and as a result, it was stuck underneath a propagating high pressure. And winds, as we all know, in the high pressure features in the vertical are sinking. They're not going anywhere. And the closer you get towards high pressure, the more stagnant or the less wind flow you typically see closest. So if these systems get stuck underneath high pressure, there's not going to be anything to stir the pot figuratively and move them on from where they sit. And that's why I think our models are showing that it could possibly stall out and just rain out. So we'll have to see what happens. Mike, I really sincerely appreciate you guys dropping the $5 donations. It means a tremendous amount, as a matter of fact, because of this lackluster live stream I'm bringing you guys. So sincerely thank you for that. It's genuinely appreciated. It's for the technical difficulties.